I am live. I haven't been live for quite a long time. I'm starting a new book, which I'm really looking forward to. I have not read it, I've just heard about it. It's entitled The Awakening Letters, by Cynthia and Rosamond Lehman. It was published in 1979, and it is an account of experience of life after death, which is something which has always interested me. In the introduction it says, many people are asking the perennial question, what happens when we die? Do we cease to be the people we have been on earth? Do we change? Do we recognize our friends? Do we remember our earth life? Do we want or need to return to earth? Cynthia Sanders and Rosamond Lehman have chosen a variety of letters from different personalities, hoping that the message they bring may awaken a sense of the continuity of life, when we can say with increasing confidence, in my end is my beginning. Cynthia, or Lady Sandys, is these letters came through the pen of Cynthia Lady Sandys, and although more than 10 years had passed since this was published, they continued to record a mass of exceptionally interesting material. She's a mentor. She was a mentor channel and recorder of remarkable purity. Clairaudient, she was not clairvoyant. So she goes into a silent preparation and then brings forth rapidly to write. The Awakening Letter is a selection received through her mental mediumship over the last 30 years, or over 30 years, and they include startling comments from and talks with Father Andrew Glazewski, Lord Arthur Sandys, Wellesley Tudor Pole, Field Marshal Lord Dowding. But the bulk of the material comes from Lady Sandys' brother, Sir Alvery Gascoigne, also called Joe. These letters form a unique record of one man's post-mortem adventures and spiritual experiences. I find this subject very interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading it. So, I'm starting with Patricia's first letter, which is from her husband. Oh Ma, I do love this plane. You never told me how frightfully well one feels. It is wonderful to be bounding with energy and able to jump straight off the ground and stay there. It makes me feel quite heady. I can't understand how our Earth could have become so awful and yet remained within the reach of these lovely rays. I'm very vague about the difference between the God ray and the Christ ray. All I know is this glorious feeling of utter peace, which breaks through everything, even my aching need for Johnny. Even that gives way, and I feel as though some warm, exhilarating substance was being poured into my veins and remaking the whole cell fabric of my body. They call it the presence. It's not in the least like the idea of presence that I had connected with God. Something awe-inspiring that would make you hold your breath in wonder and feel smaller than nothing. Here was something exactly the reverse. It literally pours into you, making you want to laugh and be gay. Something that nestles closer than oneself to oneself, closer even than Johnny. And yet it seems to be Johnny, or that Johnny is part of it. There's a feeling of breathing the same divinity. It's the breathing that connects us. When Johnny thinks of me, we breathe together, and the connection breath is God. In fact, everything is God. But somehow, we have been allowed to forget. That's her first letter. The second letter is Letters from Charles Bonham Carter. It's a strange thing, dying. Of course, your mother was one of my first visitors. She came into the hospital where I was trying to puzzle how and why I got there. I never liked hospitals. I supposed that I must have become unconscious and been taken there in that state. When I asked for my wife, the delightful young nurses became so vague I could have shaken them. Then G came in to see me and asked about my wife, but she became silent until at last I said, "Do tell me, has something awful happened to her? Is she dead?" "No," said G, taking both my hands, "but you are." I nearly sprang out of bed, it was so ridiculous. There was I, in a most comfortable bed in a charming room, with the prettiest of nurses and very good food. I looked at G in amazement, but she only laughed and reminded me she had died several years before me. I felt quite angry and put out, almost disappointed. I knew that I hadn't got very much longer to live, but I always thought death would be something majestic, awe-inspiring and tremendous, some soul-shattering moment that I should never forget, something that would quell all my earthly desires and turn me into something wiser and better, with vision and understanding. But here was I, dead, according to G, but absolutely unchanged, excepting that I had neither pain nor discomfort. Instead, I slept with ease. My meals were a great source of interest, and instead of hating the idea of food, here was I, with the appetite of a schoolboy, enjoying dainties such as I had never tasted before. I could hardly complain about the conditions that I found myself in, but all the same I felt that I had been tricked by death. I had not been allowed to see the majesty of passing. Well, one must accept one's disappointments, especially with someone so gay and lovely as your mother, who now insisted upon my going to sleep, with a promise to be with me when I awoke. I began to feel insecure. Dare I go to sleep? Where would I wake up? "Oh, just here," said G. "But if you don't believe me, I shall have to try and bring some of your immediate family." Ah, now that was a problem. Why hadn't they come with G? She explained that owing to all the work that you and she had done of this nature, she was now a trained receptionist and able to welcome us in the early stages, and that, oddly enough, I should probably not have been able to see my own family owing to their having gone further into spirit life, and having shed the lower body. So I took her advice, and feeling drowsy, I turned over and slept. When I woke up again, G was there beside me. We talked for a little, and then she said, "Wouldn't you like to get up?" At first I feared that the pain might return, but as G was quite sure that couldn't happen, I asked her to get my clothes from one of the nurses. "Oh, that's not necessary," G answered. "You just get up out of bed and you'll find your clothes will be on you quite all right." "But I must wash and shave and so on." "Oh no, that just happens here," she replied. How terrible slovenly it sounded, shambling into clothes which you never even put on. However, I was under orders, so I did as I was bid. I got out of bed without help, and sure enough, there was I, fully dressed and in my own clothes. That was rather startling, my own clothes worn here and there by me. She laughed and said, That comes of making such friends with your clothes that they grow on etheric double and come too. Now come into the garden and I want to wash. We'll bathe in the lake. A thing I hadn't done for years. The very thought made me shiver. However, off we went, moving with great ease, so long as G had my arm. Once she let go and I lost my balance and began to fall, but I never reached the ground. I lay on the air, as if it were a sofa. It was a peculiar feeling, and all the time a queer lightness was coming over me. I felt the same, only stronger, but my body seemed to be of a different texture. And when I moved, my limbs were so light, they felt almost like paper. There was an unreality which could have been terrifying if it had not been so pleasant. By the time we reached the lake, I was no longer questioning whether I might or might not wish to bathe. My body seemed so intensely different from the old one that when we reached the shore, I was quite ready to jump in, clothes and all, with the certainty that my clothes would have the good sense to withdraw and await my return. And sure enough, I was as free as air when I touched the water. And the water was quite unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. The moment I touched it, I ceased to be the heavy, practical person which I had been for the last 80-odd years and became, for the time, the most feather-headed immortal. You have no idea what fun it is to be absolutely feather-headed. I know it sounds too heartless when I remembered M and all whom I'd left behind, but they were so distant at that moment, while I was breaking the shell which bound me to earth and freeing myself in order to regain the glorious sonship with divinity. Nothing in all the world can take from one the inspiring moment when every cell in one's body becomes flooded with light. That is the sensation. All weight and confusion, all darkness of mind and body literally melt away when the parenthood of God is made manifest. I may have been disappointed by the brevity of death, but the wonder and beauty of the resurrection is beyond all explaining. I ceased to be, and yet I became more completely myself, plus so much more. I am so glad that you can write with me again. I've been doing the exercises we all do on coming over here. I don't find them difficult. I've been doing them with your family and my own, whom I can now see quite plainly, but they have almost ceased to use their voices in speech, all intercourse being telepathic, and I'm not in the least word perfect at that yet. I find the colour bath treatments the sheerest joy. I'd like to write a little about them, because M could do them on her plane. I was taken into a valley where a whole chain of tiny lakes lay like a string of precious stones set in green velvet, which seemed to be something between grass and moss. We first dived into what was pale gold. It felt like dropping straight into a buttercup, and the refreshment was instantaneous. I could swim in it, but very little physical effort was required. After a few moments in the first lake, we went on to the second, which was blue, and felt more like bathing in the sea as I knew it, but with a very great difference of vibration. Here the tremendous energy evoked by the first lake was toned down, and we were given a great sense of peace and restfulness. No sense of weariness. It was more that of power held in reserve. Only a very short time was allowed for my first immersion in the blue lake, and then we went on to the third, which was almost peach-coloured, pale pink, moving and changing into gold and pale orange. This, I was told, was my first direct contact with the Christ power, and with an immense sense of awe I dived into this moving, vibrating pool. Even while I was standing on the bank I felt my whole body relaxing and contracting rhythmically, as though it were automatically trying to align itself with this far higher and most wonderful vibration. I went deeper, allowing the water to close over me, and I experienced a further awakening of power and intention. I felt cleansed and invigorated, to which was added a quite unlimited joy of life. I have been so busy feeling that I had not yet found any words to express these sensations. I felt quite breathless with all that has happened, and it's happening to me. I can only say, how could we have lived and breathed without the constant knowledge of the presence of God? Now the old life has passed away, as Christ foretold, but we never really grasped his meaning. Behold, I make all things new. One more. This letter is from my daughter Patricia, who came in spirit to the memorial service of a master of foxhounds who had not given much thought to what happened next. He passed over suddenly with a heart attack. You called me yesterday to meet B.S. I was proud to be asked to meet that splendid-looking person. I remember him at point-to-point meetings and at the hunt ball, one scene never forgotten. I was delighted to be able to go up to him and say, I am the eldest of the Sandy's daughters. They've sent me to welcome you. He just stared at me as though I was quite crackers, and then he said very slowly, one of the Sandy's girls from Himbledon? I remember you and your sister, but what on earth are you doing here? Well, I'm not exactly on earth, that's the point, I answered, but that didn't click. He was watching the ceremony and the service. Suddenly, he caught his name being mentioned, just as though I wasn't here myself, never got any notice to attend the service. I heard him mutter, always went when they asked me. Everyone looks very depressed. What is it all about? I was standing quite close to him and whispered, I think you'll understand soon. But, God bless my soul, why shouldn't I understand now? And why are we standing in the aisle? You'd better go and find your family and I'll press in here. He did so, finding to his surprise that no one made way or took any notice of him. He looked so worried that I came closer and whispered, don't you see, it's your service, all planned for you. You knew it wouldn't be very long before you came over to us, and now it's happened, and they are all wishing you Godspeed. He accepted it quite simply, and in a most practical voice he turned to me and said, I am dead? It seemed an odd thing to ask a girl, but you seem to know what it's all about. So I agreed, and urged him to go with me right up to the altar and stand quite close to the bishop. When the blessing was given, such a draught of spirit power was invoked that we escaped straight through the roof onto another plane of living. What a bright mind he has. I am leaving with him now, with a mass of old friends and relations. Some people who'd been killed in the First World War. One is very close. Is he a brother? He was delighted to see them, and is now feeling very drowsy, and cut off from any sense of family loss. He will now probably sleep for some time, and so I have left him. Right, so that is the beginning of the awakening letters, and I'm really looking forward to reading on. It is Easter Sunday. How appropriate.